just don't know. And he's 30, is he 36? Is he my age? I think he's 36 or 35, 36. So he's a guy that you get to that age and the body wears down, especially for running backs. And obviously, we're not, Frank Gore's another one of those that's kind of the same way where it's just not showing up in terms of the wear and tear as much as for other guys. But really, both of them, I think, should be on rosters at least for training camp, and we'll kind of see. Sometimes when the body decides it's done, it happens in a hurry, faster than you would expect it. So.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about some key waiver wire pickups.
Some good waiver wire pickups for this week, especially for quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is a great pickup this week. Going up against the Houston defense that has been burned most of the year by even semi-decent wide receivers and quarterbacks. I mean, really, if you think about how well the Houston defense really shut down the New England Patriots offense, the New England Patriots offense right now is a mess. But the Houston Texans have struggled against a lot better defense or a lot better offenses, and so I think that Tannehill, with how efficient he has been, he has the most talent that has ever been around him in his career. To the point that the Tennessee Titans apparently are discussing internally about giving him an extension, not franchise tagging him, but actually giving him a multi-year extension to continue to be the starting quarterback beyond this season. So I think the matchup plays out well for him. A.J. Brown has been playing phenomenally, and with the 150 yards and 2 touchdowns that he had this past week, is in a good shape to possibly break the 1,000-yard barrier receiving in his rookie year. So he is definitely so Tannehill is definitely a guy that I would look at. Again, keeping from that same game, A.J. Brown is another one that if you're desperate for wide receiver help, especially in deeper leagues, both those guys are widely owned. A.J. Brown and Ryan Tannehill should be really good pickups for this week. And great DFS plays as well. A couple other names that come to mind: Gardner Minshew has a good matchup this week. I believe that the Jags play Oakland. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I believe the final game ever in Oakland.
Yeah. So with them playing in Oakland, and Oakland has been back and forth on whether or not their defense actually wants to show up. And for the most part, it's their front seven has been okay. But their defensive backfield, I mean, I've heard so many complaints that this is one of the worst defensive backfields Oakland has had in years, which is saying something. I think that Gardner Minshew could have a very decent game. He's not very widely owned, especially in Yahoo. Could provide a fair amount of value for anyone who's really looking for a quarterback that's really desperate, especially in deeper leagues. Just going through the list, Mitch Trubisky doesn't have the best matchup going up against Green Bay, especially at Green Bay. Oh, that was the other name. Ryan Fitzpatrick. This name always comes up as a possibility, but especially going up against the New York Giants, who have been awful really all season on defense. Ryan Fitzpatrick is definitely a guy that I think that should at least not lose you your matchup. If you're desperate for a quarterback, Fitzpatrick is a guy that should throw for at least a couple of touchdowns. He may throw 2 interceptions as well. But against the Giants, he should throw for at least a couple of touchdowns. 250 to 300 yards is not out of the realm of possibility, especially when he's got Devontae Parker as his main wide receiver. I'm pulling up running backs right now. So names to look at: Patrick Laird, again for Miami. He is the running back that's kind of taken over since Kalen Ballage went on IR. Has played very well. Totaled 86 total yards against the Jets this last week. Just looking at in terms of fantasy production, in half-point PPR, provided almost 15 points against Philadelphia, 10.5 points against the New York Jets. Both of those teams are very good against running backs. He has a much easier matchup this week against the Giants, and then next week in championship week, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are one of the worst teams at giving up fantasy points to running backs. So Patrick Laird is very much on that waiver wire pickup guys to look at, and those are for the most part those are the main pickups there. And CJ Prosise is actually owned in 0% of leagues across the board in Yahoo. Again, going up against the Carolina defense that gives up the most fantasy points to running backs. He's going to be the main guy giving a spell to Chris Carson this weekend. So Prosise is definitely a guy to look at for this week. Real quick, I'm looking at trying to see if there's any other wide receivers I think that actually should be out. Darius Slayton going up against Miami. Miami gives up the second most amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. Darius Slayton has been on a roll the last few weeks, and there was concern about what the chemistry differences would be with the wide receivers and everything, with Eli Manning stepping in instead of Daniel Jones. And with Eli Manning, he ends up scoring almost 30 points this last week against Philadelphia, who gives up the fourth most points to wide receivers. This next week he has a home game against Miami and it's an easier matchup, and so he should provide a decent amount of value over these next couple weeks as kind of that flex play if you're really struggling to find some play there. So.
Okay.
I mentioned A.J. Brown, and really those are the main names I'm looking at there. Look at tight ends real quick. Just looking at the tight end pool. The tight end pool is not great. The guys that I would look at in terms of tight ends would be Tyler Higbee, who's been on a roll the last couple weeks, going up against a Dallas team that's not great against tight ends. Should be a good matchup for him. Tyler Higbee will be fine as long as Gerald Everett sits out another week. So that's something to watch out. Tyler Higbee is, again, a guy that his value is going to come if Everett's out. And really the only other name that I'm really looking at would possibly be Mike Gesicki, again, from Miami, going up against the New York Giants. He's been really a roller coaster ride all season, but as far as tight ends go, that's really the life you live if you don't draft in the beginning of the year, if you don't draft George Kittle, Travis Kelce, or Tyler Eifert. If you don't draft any of those three, it's a roller coaster ride for the rest of the season for tight ends. So,
all right. So, how do you think Jimmy Garoppolo will do?
Looking at that matchup, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that Jimmy should be okay this week. Again, he's going up against the Atlanta defense that gives up the third most amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks. Jimmy has played extremely well in positions and has played extremely bad in other positions. So I think that with this being an easier matchup, he should be in good shape. Really, it's against easy teams he's thrown very well against, and against teams that have stronger defenses he has struggled against. So I think with this being a kind of a team that's really struggled, Trufant, the top corner for Atlanta, went out with, I believe, with a broken forearm this last week. So really they're down to their last legs on their defense in Atlanta. So really, this should be a good game for Jimmy Garoppolo and should provide a lot of value. Should at least hit projection, if not do better this week.
No, I mean, he had a heck of a phenomenal game against New Orleans. I mean, did you ever expect a shootout of that caliber between the 49ers and the Saints? I knew there'd be some points scored, but not that many.
Well, especially considering that both teams' defenses have played pretty well this year.
Exactly.
But the offenses really, both offenses have a lot of firepower. So.
Okay. If you had a chance to choose between Josh Jacobs or Melvin Gordon, who do you have?
Josh Jacobs, again, he's going up against the Jaguars. Looking at the schedule, Gordon is playing against who's
the Vikings.
Pull that up. Who is it?
They get the Vikings, but they're at home.
At home against the Vikings. The Vikings. Okay, the Vikings' run defense has been phenomenal this season. Top 5, top 6, until going up against the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. That dropped them down to like 13th because the Seahawks ran for almost 200 yards, or right around 200 yards against them total. I think that Gordon, it's a tougher matchup for Gordon than for Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs, again, is dealing with injury, so it's one of those things where you have to kind of wait and see, kind of what they're saying about how much of a load they're willing to give him for the week. But I would say it's probably safer with Josh Gordon, with Josh Jacobs than it is for Melvin Gordon.
Even though Melvin Gordon is probably a pretty good receiver out of the backfield as well.
True, but the one that they're using mostly for the receiving out of the backfield is Austin Eckler.
Okay. So you say Josh Jacobs over Melvin Gordon. Interesting. All right. Just curious. All right, so let's talk about some games that stood out in Week 14.
Some Week 14 games that really stood out to me. Let me pull up the actual Week 14 scores. Obviously, that massive shootout between San Francisco and New Orleans was unprecedented. Everyone was honestly expecting a much lower scoring game, but that game was just it was very impressive to see those offenses play as well as they did. Really, another game that really stuck out was the Thursday night game, Chicago. The Dallas defense made Mitchell Trubisky look like an all-pro. And the Dallas defense, for the most part, had played pretty solid in a lot of different areas this year. But that team is going downhill, and it's been ugly. Chicago really came back and played well. Mitch Trubisky played well, throwing to multiple receivers, and so that was definitely an interesting game for me. I don't think that Trubisky can do the same thing this next week going up against Green Bay in Green Bay. It helped that it was a home game. But that was definitely interesting to see. I don't think Dallas poses as much of a threat on defense as they have in the past. Another game that stuck out to me was the Baltimore and Buffalo game. Buffalo played Baltimore very, very well, very closely, very tough. And so I think that the Bills in the playoffs could be dangerous depending on how the matchups play out.
Right.
So definitely something to watch for there. Other games that stood out, the way that Denver really knocked around the Houston Texans. Was not expecting that. Drew Lock was just, I want to say someone said, I saw a thing where it said Drew Lock is the first NFL rookie quarterback to throw for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards in his rookie season's first road start.
Yeah, Joe Flacco probably doesn't like that, does he?
So I it could be that they have found their guy in Drew Lock, and so that was an interesting game. Looking at some others, the Chargers putting up 45 against Jacksonville. That defense has really just kind of given up the ghost. I want to say, what have they lost 5 straight of 17 by 17 points or more?
Yeah, that was bad. That's true. I guess if there's an argument that would work in favor of putting Josh Jacobs in, I saw it firsthand the way Gordon went ahead and took care of Jacksonville. Now you have Jacobs, obviously, facing the same Jaguars team, so that's a good point. And, yeah, it was a tough game for me to watch since I covered Jacksonville.
Well, and even not just Gordon, but look at what Eckler did. Eckler had what they call a double triple. He had 300 rushing or 100 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards in that game.
Okay.
With 2 touchdowns. So really, the Jacksonville defense was just non-existent. I'm trying